the MIR exam, and its challenging preparation usually deemed as traumatizing by many emerging medical graduates. But what is it? Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Dr. Ziknes. I'm Danny, a soon-to-be 6th-year med student based in Spain, and this is kind of like a space where I show my journey through medicine, work on improving my life habits, and showcase my stubbornness to be defined by a single thing. So, what the hell is this? The MIR exam, otherwise known as the Médico Interno Residente or Resident Intern Doctor in Spanish. In English it doesn't sound as good. It's this national exam that medical graduates must take to pursue specialty training in Spain. And there are no alternatives to this exam. If you want to pursue specialty training in Spain, you need to go through this stage. It is only held once a year, usually between January and February, and obviously in medical Spanish. Anyone is allowed to take it, whether they are from Spain, from another country in the European Union, or from a country outside of the EU. However, with this last group, there is one more thing that needs to be discussed and very importantly considered before taking this exam. How does it work? This exam consists of 210 multiple choice questions, out of which 200 are scored. And yes, you did hear that correctly. I'll explain in a second. It lasts a maximum of 4 hours and 30 minutes. Each question has 4 possible options with 1 correct answer. Each correct response gets you 3 points, and each wrong response actually subtracts 1 point from your overall score. And if you leave a question blank, of course, that just does nothing. You may think I made a mistake, as I said there's 210 questions but only 200 are answered, and that is correct. The last 10 questions kind of serve as backups. I don't know about other parts of the world, but at least in Spain, it's very typical for questions to be challenged. This is called an impugnación in Spanish, and generally this occurs when a candidate notices that a question might be worded incorrectly or is just factually wrong. If an appeal is made and approved by the Ministry of Health, then that question is annulled and the first backup question takes the place of the point it originally represented, and then so on. The final mark of a candidate consists in 90% of their score being what they scored in the exam, and the remaining 10% is dependent on their academic record throughout the years of medical school. The final scores of all candidates are then ordered, with the best scored being awarded position 1, the second best scored being awarded position 2, and so on. There is a period here in which the candidate then, depending on how well that score was, decides to assort a ranked list of all the programs that they would like to match into. Then the ministry calls up candidate number 1 and assigns them their first choice in their list. Then they go to candidate number 2. If candidate number 2 put the same option as candidate number 1, meaning that it's already taken, then they move on to their next possible choice in their list. And then they move to candidate number 3 and so on until they have matched all the offered training positions for that year. Okay, multiple choice exam. Why is that a big deal? The MIR exam essentially is supposed to test candidates on all aspects of medicine. But what's the problem with that? As many of you in the medical world know, our medical knowledge changes constantly, meaning that there is no official MIR syllabus. In other words, candidates each year could potentially be tested on new diseases, emerging diagnostic methods, and new treatment options. So for this exam, one kind of has to stay up to date with medical discoveries, essentially. And now the exam in the recent years seems to be heading into more of a practical setting than a theoretical one, as more and more questions each year are now geared into clinical cases, which are longer and harder to figure out because it's not just reciting a fun fact about the human body. You need to apply various pieces of information in order to deduce the right answer, and questions can be very tricky in this exam. It's a competitive exam. There's always a limited number of spots, as the number of applicants usually is greater than the number of seats available. This year on the 2025 MIR exam, 9,007 positions across 46 specialties were offered, with a total of 15,106 candidates competing to get a spot. The distribution of specialties is not uniform. For example, family medicine is considered one, if not the least competitive specialty in Spain, with actually 246 spots left vacant last year, because candidates would rather try again than pick out family medicine. That's insane. This is becoming a public health crisis, as more and more GPs are retiring every year, leaving a huge gap in many communities in Spain for public healthcare, and also exacerbating the current deficits that the Spanish medical system has in the present. On the other hand, specialties such as plastic surgery or dermatology are almost impossible to match into unless you get a position above a certain number. Previous work experience, research publication, and leadership roles do not contribute in any way, shape, or form to the final MIR score, meaning that a lot of medical students are deciding to prioritize their energy and time into preparing for this exam rather than trying to venture into other aspects of medicine, which in my opinion is a huge fallback. It's such a big deal that most applicants actually enroll in these specialized academies that prepare you for the exam, provide mock exams, and very intensive courses in order to facilitate the candidate getting a better position on the exam. Another important thing to consider is the way that this MIR exam operates. This exam does not care if you score high or low. It cares if you are better than the people who also took the exam next to you. That is why, despite the recent 2025 MIR exam being referred to as the hardest MIR exam ever made, that doesn't really make a difference. If the exam is easier, everyone will score higher. If the exam is harder, everyone will score lower. What makes a difference is if you're better than the other candidates in your cycle. Considering all these factors and the fact that it's only offered once a year, this exam is a major, gigantic, insane source of stress for all medical graduates. As one could argue, this is probably the most important exam a physician has to take in their entire training, in Spain at least. And then there's a fine print for people who come from the outside of the EU, because then you also have to face limited non-EU quotas. Basically, in order for the government to ensure that most of the seats go to local graduates, or EU graduates if we're putting it more specifically, the government imposes a limit on the total number of seats offered each cycle for non-EU candidates. It changes every year. This year it was 10% of the spots, if I'm not mistaken. Once those limited spaces have been filled, any following non-EU candidates cannot be accepted for a residency position, regardless of the score that they got. In reality, this limit isn't fully reached until after positions 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and at this point most of the competitive specialties have been filled, so unless the specialty that you wanted was very competitive, it's unlikely that you'll be too affected by this. The best thing is always to score higher, of course. But with more people retaking the exam and more international doctors applying to the MIR, this point can never really be guaranteed. It depends each year. I know so far that it seems like I'm telling you about this really horrible thing that doctors must go through, but I am all for transparency and I don't like sugarcoating things. When in reality, this is something that if you want to do specialty training here, you must face. However, I'll give credit when it's due. What is a good thing about the exam? That it's so intense that people study religiously for this and hence generally know their stuff by the time that they start their first year of residency. When you combine this intensive preparation with the amazing bedside manner and human touch that is taught in Spanish medical schools here, you get some really amazing and insanely hardworking doctors out of it. Personally, I have a lot of issues with the way that the MIR exam operates, but that is just my opinion, of course. The current dilemma that the emerging medical community in Spain is having is there is a lot of questioning whether a doctor's value should really be placed on how well they do in a multiple choice exam. This, alongside inflexible working conditions and perceived low salaries relative to other countries in Europe, has led to thousands of doctors in Spain to leave the country to practice medicine elsewhere, which then also creates a further deficit on the already existing deficit that Spanish healthcare has, especially in the primary care setting. The government tried fixing this by increasing the number of doctors, by increasing the number of seats in medical school, but because the number of residency positions afterward have not increased, this has only led to a further strain on an already very competitive sphere in which people suffer from imposter syndrome, jealousy, and just generally a really hard time when preparing for this exam. Without the changes in legislation that current healthcare workers in Spain demand, there isn't really gonna be anything stopping more and more doctors from fleeing the country each year, if we can say it like that. However, of course, this also varies for each person, and if the MIR is a right choice for you, then I would suggest just go for it. If you are someone who, despite a very challenging journey ahead, wants to study medicine in Spain or wants to take on the MIR exam, I sincerely wish you the best of luck, and my advice would be thorough preparation and understanding is key. It's always best to stay informed and staying up to date. If there is anything that I missed or I could have explained better, please let me know in a comment down below. Also feel free to share your thoughts on the MIR exam and what comes with it. If you like content like this, don't forget to subscribe and actually do hit that bell so that you can get notified when I make a new video. I wish you the best. Chaito!